God's chosen ones. Everything else is poison in the days ahead. Only these will keep you alive. Your life is becoming a mirror of divine purpose, a holy triumph unfolding through you, chosen one of God. If your heart is ready to step into this sacred calling, type 777 or 444 in the comments. Let that be your covenant, your bold yes to heaven's perfect timing. Chosen one, listen closely, because this is an urgent message. The Lord has spoken. Everything else is poison. Only 3 sacred foods will keep you alive in the days ahead. If you're hearing these words right now, it is no accident. This is a signal from heaven, a whisper reminding you that you are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are chosen. The storm is coming. The sifting has already begun, and only those who obey will stand. This is the hour of decision. Will you step into life or fade into the shadows with the rest? Chosen one, destiny is calling you, and it begins right here, right now. Throughout Scripture, one truth repeats again and again. Before the storm breaks, God always whispers to his people. He told Noah to build the ark while the skies were still clear. He told Joseph to store grain while the harvest was still plentiful. He stirred Esther to fast and pray while her people stood on the edge of destruction. And now he is warning you, chosen one. You did not stumble across this message by chance. This is heaven's signal, sent directly to you. The earth is entering a time of chaos like never before. Spirits unsettled, bodies weary, faith shaken. Yet in the midst of the noise, a sound rises clearer than all the rest. You have been chosen to survive. You have been called by name to stand firm. Do you feel it deep within your heart, as if someone is whispering your very name? As if every trial, every tear, every time you fell and rose again has been leading you to this moment, to recognize this truth. You are not abandoned. You are not invisible. You are loved completely, unconditionally. Chosen one, God does not want you merely to survive. He wants you purified, prepared, and guided, so you can be a light in the darkness that is coming. And he begins with a message so simple, yet so vital to your survival. Everything else is poison. Only the 3 things I give you will keep you alive. So pause for a moment, breathe, and ask yourself this question. Have you ever felt God calling your name? Part 1. The command. The earth was unnervingly still. In the middle of the night, it felt as though all creation was holding its breath. Then suddenly, a sound broke through. It was not the siren of man, but the trumpet of heaven shaking the very soul. The sound did not only echo outward, it pierced straight into the heart of the chosen one. Chosen one, listen carefully. Everything else is poison. Only the 3 things I give will keep you alive. The words did not arrive as gentle advice. They tore across the heavens like thunder, leaving a trembling weight in the chest. The listener shivered not out of fear, but out of holy awe, for they knew they had just touched a secret of heaven, a direct command from the Creator himself. In that instant, everything familiar suddenly felt strange. The daily meals once taken for granted, full tables, flavorful dishes suddenly raised a chilling question. Were these the very poisons the Lord was warning about? And then, within the thick silence, 3 words shone like beams of light cutting through the night. Rice, beans, salmon. No glamour, no luxury, no complication. Yet they were spoken like a sacred password that unlocked the door to life itself. The chosen one fell to their knees, hands trembling, eyes filling with tears. For years they had cried out, "How can I survive? How will I withstand the coming storm?" And now, the answer had come not as weapons, not as wealth, but as 3 humble foods. Memories of Scripture rushed back. Israel in the desert, fed by manna from heaven. The widow with her last bit of flour and oil, told by Elijah, "Do not be afraid. Do as the Lord has said, and the jar never ran dry. God's promises had never failed. And now, once more, he was speaking, this time with a new sign for this generation. Only rice, beans, and salmon. Tears streamed down, not from terror, but from a sense of holy privilege. Out of billions of people, God had chosen them to hear this command first. This was not merely about food. This was God's way of saying, you are chosen. You will live. You will testify of my goodness. A hand pressed against their chest, feeling the heartbeat thundering like a drum of war. This was no longer about ordinary survival. This was a divine battle, and they had just been handed their first weapon. As the trumpet faded, a strange stillness cloaked the room. Still kneeling, breath heavy, they heard a voice again, clear, sharp, etched into every cell of their being. In the days ahead, everything else is poison. Only the 3 I have sanctified will keep you alive. Rice, beans, and salmon. The sound reverberated not just in the ears, but in the soul. Not a word was wasted, not a pause meaningless. Each syllable cut like a sword, dividing doubt from truth. At first, the chosen one wondered, why only 3? Why not other wholesome foods? But then, memories stirred. Noah had been mocked when he built the ark. Abraham had been tested with Isaac. They did not need to understand, they only needed to believe. And belief opened the gates for miracles. The voice spoke again. Do not reason, do not debate, only obey. Rice will anchor you, beans will strengthen your body, salmon will awaken your mind. This is not merely food. This is the survival code hidden within creation, now revealed to my chosen ones. The chosen one bowed low, tears spilling to the floor. In that moment, resistance melted away. They understood now this was not a diet. This was a covenant. Every grain of rice, every bean, every piece of salmon, each was a holy seal of preservation. God would not let them walk into the storm alone. He had prepared them in advance. When they lifted their head, the room glowed softly with a golden light. It was not blinding, but warm, steady, assuring, and in that glow rose a conviction. I am chosen. I have heard the command, and I will obey. A whisper followed. Not all will believe. Many will mock. Many will refuse. But those who obey, they will stand strong amidst the chaos. You are not eating just to live. You are eating to step into your calling. The weight of reverence filled the air. The chosen one felt as though a golden key had been placed in their hand, not to the treasures of this world, but to life itself, to clarity, and to an unshakable faith. Their heart trembled with both fear and fire. Fear because the world outside would go on feasting, unaware that much had already turned to poison. Fire because they now knew they had been set apart, entrusted with a holy directive few would ever hear. They rose slowly, stepping toward the small wooden table in the kitchen. On it still lay the familiar foods, red meat, pastries, half-finished fast food. But now, a sense of revulsion welled up, not because of the taste, but because their spirit knew these were hidden traps, snares for the soul. The whisper of prayer escaped their lips. Lord, I am unworthy, yet you have chosen me. Give me strength to obey. This was no diet plan. This was sacred command. Every meal had become a ritual. Every grain of rice a prayer. Every bean a step of faith. Every piece of salmon a spark of light within the mind. The responsibility was heavy, yet in that weight was an honor beyond words. To see ahead, to be warned ahead, to be armed before the storm, while millions still slept, numbed by the false food of the world. The chosen one had heard heaven's trumpet. Tears blurred their vision, not tears of dread, but of gratitude. For to be chosen is to be loved without condition. Amid billions, God had spoken their name. Amid chaos, he had placed a lamp in their hand and said, Follow this light. They realized they were not living just for themselves. Their obedience would shield their family, guide their community. What they ate, what they chose would become a testimony to others. The faithfulness of one could unlock the doorway of salvation for many. Breathing deeply, they whispered, "I accept. This is my charge, and this is my honor." The kitchen seemed to glow brighter. Obedience no longer felt like burden. It was the key that unlocked glory. That night, the chosen one sat in the dim kitchen, only a small oil lamp flickering. Before them were 3 simple foods: a bowl of white rice, a dish of simmered beans, and a piece of roasted salmon, so ordinary in the eyes of the world. Yet to them, each gleamed like jewels hidden in the desert night. With trembling hands, they lifted the bowl of rice. It was not just grain, it was stability. Each bite echoed like footsteps of Israel in the wilderness, sustained by manna. Every spoonful whispered, "You will stand firm. You will not be moved." Then came the beans. Their earthy fragrance filled the air. Each bean felt like a brick, rebuilding the temple of the body. Flesh may grow weak, but these carried strength, healing, renewal. "Lord," they whispered, "you are restoring me, piece by piece." Finally, the salmon, tender, radiant pink. As it touched their lips, warmth spread through their body, a fire sparking in their mind. The fog lifted, memories sharpened, forgotten dreams returned. God's voice sounded clearer than ever before. In that moment, the kitchen became a sanctuary, a meal transformed into a holy ritual. Just as Jesus broke bread and the disciples' eyes were opened, so too the eyes of their spirit opened wide. They saw hope. They saw they were not alone. They saw the miracle beginning through a bowl of rice, a handful of beans, a piece of salmon. Tears flowed freely, not of fear, but of comfort. They knew, "I am being purified. I am being called. I am being prepared." Their body felt lighter, their mind sharper. Their soul began to sing. They had crossed a threshold from mere survival into rebirth. And in the whisper of the wind came a voice, "Chosen one." The miracle begins with small obedience. After that first meal, they sat still, hand pressed to their chest, as though holding the flame that had just been lit. The kitchen was silent, but their spirit thundered. "You are not eating to live. You are eating to walk into destiny." Suddenly, the faces of loved ones came to mind: family, neighbors, the community still unaware. They were still feasting in ignorance, not knowing the storm was at the door. The chosen one's heart ached. How could they keep this secret? How could they remain silent? And then came the whisper, "You cannot keep this truth to yourself. You must share it. You must warn them." This is the burden and the privilege of the chosen. The chosen one wept, knowing the road ahead would be lonely. They would be mocked. Rice, beans, salmon? That's ridiculous. They would be dismissed. That's madness. But Noah had been mocked. Joseph doubted. Esther dismissed. And all of them stood because they obeyed before the miracle came. In the golden glow filling the room, the chosen one whispered their vow. "I will obey, even if I must walk against the crowd. I will be faithful, for you have chosen me." They lifted their head, eyes blazing with conviction. They were no longer a victim of circumstance. They had become a warrior of life. And then, like a voice reaching through the story to the listener's very soul, the question came: if God placed you in this moment, if He declared that everything else was poison, and only the 3 He appointed would keep you alive, what would you do? Would you believe, or would you doubt? The question hung in the air, heavy, piercing, as though the eyes of God Himself were looking straight into the heart of every listener. Part 2, Why Only 3? The chosen one sat quietly after the first night of obedience. But in the silence, one question lingered like a shadow. Why only rice, beans, and salmon? Why not something else? Closing their eyes, they whispered a prayer. Lord, open my eyes to see your wisdom. Do not let me view these three foods with reason alone, but with the eyes of my soul. And then it was as though a veil was lifted. They saw something wondrous. Within every grain of rice, every bean, every strand of salmon flesh, there pulsed not just nutrients, but radiant bands of light. They shimmered like heartbeats, sending out frequencies in harmony with the soul. A voice rose softly. You think this is food, but it is holy technology hidden in creation. The world turns to machines, medicines, dazzling inventions. But I placed power in the seed, in the rivers, in the oceans. My science surpasses the science of men. The chosen one trembled. All their life they had eaten rice only to be full, beans only for health, fish only for flavor. But now they understood. Each was a code of survival. Rice like the earth itself, steady, grounding, nurturing the roots. Beans like the bloodstream, rebuilding, healing, restoring life. Salmon like light, igniting clarity, awakening the mind. Tears blurred their sight. For years they had chased strength in outward places, in the promises of the world, in supplements, in complex diets. Yet God had hidden the answer in what was simplest, humblest, most overlooked. Just as David carried only a stone to fell Goliath, now God was placing three small things into their hands, enough to withstand the storm that was coming. They cried out, Lord, you are marvelous. In the simplest things, you have hidden unmatched power. Teach me to see you, even in what is small. And hope swelled within them. If within rice, beans, and salmon there was divine code, then surely their very body, the temple of God, would be rebuilt and set ablaze. They lifted a bowl of white rice, soft grains, humble as breath. But when their eyes lingered, a vision unfolded, vast golden fields under the sun, the waves of rice whispering like prayers. A gentle yet sovereign voice said, Rice does more than feed your body. It carries the breath of the earth. Every grain reminds you that you stand firm on this soil because I have commanded the earth to yield. As they tasted the sweetness of rice, tears came unbidden. A strange calm spread across their being. The trembling in their soul quieted, as if God himself whispered, Be still. I hold the foundation. Memories stirred, moments of collapse, loss of work, loss of loved ones, sickness pressing hard. Times when the world shook, yet some unseen strength held them steady. Now they understood. It was the frequency of rice, God's hidden anchor, keeping them unshaken. Scripture rose in their mind. The righteous shall never be moved. And they whispered, Lord, let my life be as steady as this grain, though the storms rage. Rice had no glamour, no vivid color, no powerful flavor. Yet its very simplicity held power like faith itself, not showy, but silently keeping the soul from collapse. Through tears, they smiled. They knew. When chaos sweeps tomorrow, when headlines shake men's hearts, they would still stand, not because of their own strength, but because of each grain sanctified by God. Breathing deep, they whispered, I am anchored in God. I will not be moved. Then they lifted a bowl of beans. Steam rose, fragrant with earth and sun, small, round, fragile yet on their tongue. The beans dissolved like embers of fire, spreading warmth through their weary frame. In that moment, they saw themselves small, weak, often breaking. So many nights they had whispered, I cannot go on. And yet each dawn, somehow, they rose again. Now they understood. That hidden strength was the same power God had sown into the bean. Life rising from what seemed dead, a whisper filled their soul. I choose the weak to confound the strong. I choose the small to accomplish the great. And they wept, for beans were more than protein and fiber. They were resurrection embodied. dry, brittle, lifeless yet when buried in earth, they burst forth in new creation. So too was the journey of the chosen one. From failure, they rose. From loss, they found hope. From ashes, they emerged stronger. Lord, they prayed, make me like this being small but alive with hidden strength. As they swallowed, they felt fragments of their soul knitting together, no longer broken, but rebuilt, no longer defeated, but prepared. A voice echoed, "You think yourself small, but in my hands, you carry the strength of a generation." Their gaze fell next upon the salmon radiant, tender, glowing orange like a sunset over waters. Touching it with their fingers, a vision came, rushing rivers and salmon fighting upstream, defying the current to return to their source. The voice of God thundered softly, "So too, my chosen, you are not made to drift with the world's chaos. You are made to go against the flow, to return to the source of light." As they took the first bite, fire flooded their mind. It was as though thousands of lamps blazed at once. The fog of exhaustion and doubt lifted. Thoughts became clear, memories sharp. Dreams once dead stirred back to life. They gasped, "Lord, I feel the light in my mind. They hear you clearer. I see the path ahead brighter. This is no mere food. This is fire you have lit within me." Salmon carried oil of healing, soaking through every cell. Mending unseen wounds, it did not only strengthen the body, it connected the spirit back to divine vision. And as their minds shone with clarity, their heart overflowed with peace. They remembered Jesus' words, "You are the light of the world." And they knew this light was not just a metaphor, it was reality, burning within them, ignited by something as simple as a piece of salmon. Tears fell again, but these were tears of awakening. A soul once clouded was now ablaze with revelation, and the whisper came, "The flame of wisdom has been lit. Use this light to guide others." Before them sat three simple foods, rice, beans, and salmon. But they no longer appeared ordinary. They were three pillars of light, three divine codes woven into creation since the beginning. Rice anchored their steps with God's foundation. Beans rebuilt their temple from brokenness into strength. Salmon lit their mind with vision and clarity. Together, they formed a symphony of life body, mind, and soul renewed. They whispered, "Lord, now I see. This is not food alone. This is the code you gave so I may not only survive, but live with purpose." And in their spirit, they saw others, chosen ones, scattered across the earth, eating the same humble meal, rising in the same frequency. An unseen army being trained not with swords, but with rice, beans, and salmon, weeping with gratitude. They whispered, "This is my covenant. My obedience may be small, but through it, you unlock life, light, and restoration." And the call resounded in their heart. You do not eat only to live. You eat to step into destiny. You eat to be a witness that I am still with my people. The room grew still, and once more, the question rose, piercing the hearts of every listener, as though God's eyes gazed straight into them. If God placed you in this moment, declaring that everything else was poison, and only these three would preserve you, what would you do? Would you obey, or would you doubt? Part 3, Poison on the Plate. The chosen one sat in a crowded restaurant, watching tables overflowing with food, platters of steaming grilled meat, golden fried chicken, bags of colorful snacks, bottles of soda sparkling under the light. On the surface, it all looked like a feast, a celebration. But inside, they heard the voice of warning ring clear. Everything else is poison. What looks like joy is only a trap. Their eyes narrowed, looking closer. The red meat seemed to shift in color, tinged with gray shadows. The laughter and chatter around them began to dissolve into sounds of groaning. And then they saw, not with physical sight, but with the eyes of the soul, the hidden scenes behind every dish. A cow driven into the slaughterhouse, eyes wide with terror before collapsing. Its cry echoed like despair locked inside each fiber of flesh. Chickens crammed in darkness, wings beating weakly until the day their feathers were torn away. The chosen one's stomach turned. Again the voice spoke. You think you eat meat, but you are swallowing fear. You think you drink soda, but you are drinking chemicals. You think you are celebrating, but you are poisoning your soul. The spoon slipped from their hand. Tears welled. All these years, they had eaten like everyone else, unaware, thoughtless, calling it normal. But now they saw. Every careless bite had been shortening the life of their spirit. Memories returned, nights of exhaustion without reason, sleepless hours, days when their mind felt heavy and clouded. It was not just stress, not just worry. The table itself had been a battlefield. The enemy did not only tempt faith with lust or pride, it poisoned silently through food. The chosen one bowed low, whispering, Lord, forgive me for dishonoring your temple. I have swallowed death, not even knowing it. A faint light flickered before their eyes, reminding them truth had now been revealed. Once seen, it could never be unseen. The visions would not leave. They saw vast farms, thousands of animals locked in cages too tight to move. The cries, the gasping, the pleading eyes all pressed in on them. Then came the most painful sight. An animal dragged from the line, eyes shaking with terror. Moments before the knife fell, its body released waves of panic. Hormones of fear seared into its flesh. That terror was trapped in every bite. A whisper echoed in the soul. You think it is just food, but when you eat, you take in fear, pain, and death. That energy does not vanish, it becomes part of you. Clutching their stomach, they trembled. They remembered the sudden mood swings, bursts of anger, unexplained anxiety. Now they understood. It was not only emotion, it was the residue of fear sealed into their meals. Through tears, they prayed, Lord, I have eaten the trauma of creation. I have let death dwell in me. Cleanse me. At once, a gentle warmth appeared, a whisper of hope. You have seen truth. You are no longer bound. I revealed this to free you. Their heads sank to the table, heartbreaking. Food was no longer about taste. It was about life or death. Each plate was now a doorway, either for light or for darkness. Raising their eyes, they whispered a vow. From now on, I will not eat blindly. I will choose life. I will choose light. They thought the pain had reached its limit. But then God opened another layer. A vision of a sterile laboratory appeared. Under pale fluorescent light, seeds were cut, spliced, rearranged. Scientists in white coats laughed, but the chosen one's spirit heard clearly. These are no longer my seeds. These are lifeless imitations. Shock filled them. They remembered buying flawless fruit, high-yield grains, products stamped clean. But now the mask fell. These were fragments without soul, no breath of God. The voice thundered, you think you eat for life, but you swallow death. These foods have lost their seed of creation. They do not nourish, you wither under them. Tears burned. They recalled fruit that looked perfect, but tasted empty. Grains that never satisfied. Now they knew the spirit had been stripped away. In anguish they cried, Lord, the world has twisted your creation. They have stolen the wholeness of seed. They sold lies, and I partook. Forgive my foolishness. A soft breeze brushed their soul. You are not abandoned. This truth does not condemn it. Freeze. Now you may choose again. They wept into their hands. Every purchase, every bite was no longer mere habit. It was a spiritual choice, truth or deception, life or death, lifting their gaze. Clarity pierced through tears. They were blind no longer. They would choose light. Back home, they looked at their own table. Snacks unopened, half-empty bottles of soda, frozen meat in the fridge. ordinary in every household. But now, in their eyes, the table was no longer fellowship. It was a battlefield. They saw two forces at war. On one side, darkness cloaked in shiny packaging, flavors engineered, chemicals hidden, fear and deceit inside. On the other, the quiet glow of rice, beans, salmon. No marketing, no flash, yet radiating peace, purity, and God's touch. The Lord's voice broke through. This is no longer just a meal. This is war. The enemy seeks to numb your soul by poisoning your body. For if the fire within you dies, you will forget your calling. But I have prepared a way simple, holy. Which side will you choose? The chosen one trembled. For years, they had eaten in autopilot, but now they saw every bite was a spiritual decision, either opening a door for darkness or inviting light. Tears fell upon the table. I never knew. Meals could decide the fate of my soul. In the vision, they saw millions still feasting carelessly, laughter on their lips, but their spirits fading, eyes dimming, light extinguished. Yet those who chose rice, beans, salmon shone brighter, bodies strong, spirits steady. The chosen one's heart clenched. This was no private choice. It was testimony for family, for community. When they chose light, others would see. When they sat at the table, the whole room would glow with God's presence. Placing a hand upon the table, they whispered, Lord, I choose you. I choose light upon my table. And the light spread, chasing away the shadows in the room. They knew then, from this day forward, the table was no longer just a table. It was an altar, a daily covenant with God. Part 4, Lessons from Scripture. The chosen one closed their eyes in prayer, and suddenly, in the vision of the Spirit, the scene unfolded. A multitude wandering through a scorching desert, dust rising, sun blazing, throats parched, stomachs hollow. It was Israel, freed from Egypt, yet now trapped in emptiness. No water, no food, no hope. In their despair, they cried, even longing for Egypt again, just for something to eat. But then the heavens opened. Small white flakes fell like morning dew, covering the ground. The people stared at one another and asked, Man who? What is this? And Moses answered, This is the bread the Lord has given you. The chosen one wept at the sight. Manna was no delicacy, no man-made invention, no crafted recipe. It came directly from the hand of God, enough for each day, never too much, never too little. A reminder that God always provides, even when the way seems impossible. They whispered, Lord, you never abandon your people. When they thought they would die in the wilderness, you rained bread from heaven. And when I thought I would collapse in trial, you gave me nourishment from above. And in their spirit they saw the parallel. Manna then, rice beans, salmon now. Yesterday, bread from heaven sustained Israel. Today, 3 simple foods keep alive the chosen ones in times of upheaval. Tears fell not from fear, but from faith renewed. God has not changed. The one who prepared for them in the desert prepares for us now. With a steady heart, the chosen one whispered, If you gave manna then, you will give us enough now. I will not fear lack. I will believe. Another scene opened before them. An old man with silver hair hammering massive planks of wood. Around him, villagers laughed. The sky was clear, the sun warm. Not a drop of rain in sight. Noah, have you lost your mind? They mocked, building a boat on dry ground. You fool! But Noah kept working. Every hammer strike, every timber joined, done not by reason, but by faith in God's command. The chosen one's heart ached. How many times had they too been ridiculed for obeying the inner voice of God, called foolish, too strict, too serious. And now, seeing Noah, they understood. True obedience always looks like madness to the world. Then came the rain, at first a sprinkle, then a torrent. The waters rose, swallowing everything. Cries filled the air, but only Noah's family, those who prepared, were safe within the ark. Tears streamed as they heard God's whisper, as with Noah, "I am telling you to prepare," while the world laughs. While they see no signs, I call you to stand apart, to hear and obey. When the storm comes, your obedience will be your ark. The chosen one whispered back, "Lord, I do not want to follow the crowd. Make me Noah in my generation." Though mocked, I will obey. And they knew rice, beans, salmon were no ordinary foods. They were the ark, built in another form. By choosing them, they were building a vessel of survival for themselves and their household. Then another vision came. A young man once betrayed by his brothers, sold as a slave, cast into prison, but now standing in Pharaoh's palace, clothed in power and wisdom. It was Joseph. Pharaoh's troubling dream: 7 fat cows and 7 thin, 7 full heads of grain and 7 scorched. None could interpret, except Joseph filled with the Spirit of God. There will be 7 years of plenty, Joseph explained, followed by 7 years of famine. God reveals this so we may prepare. And so Egypt stored grain, built barns, planned ahead. Some scoffed at Joseph as overly cautious. But when famine struck, when nations starved, Egypt alone had food. The chosen ones sobbed at the sight. God's whisper burned in their heart. I always warn my people to prepare. Joseph did not store grain for himself alone, but to save a nation. So too, your obedience today is not just for you. It will preserve many around you. Their heart clenched. Faces of family rose before them, elderly parents, small children, neighbors unaware of God. If they ignored the command, if they dismissed the warning, they would not only betray themselves, but all the souls entrusted to them. "Lord," they cried, "give me Joseph's spirit. I do not want to live for myself. Let me prepare so I can feed, comfort, and rescue those you've placed around me." And they realized rice, beans, salmon are the storehouses of this generation. Not gold, not luxury, but obedience. When famine comes, these will be the grain that sustains. Then came yet another scene. A palace in Persia, walls gilded, incense rising. A young Jewish orphan girl walked nervously, Esther, crown upon her head. Yet her crown was not privilege, a burden, for a decree of destruction loomed over her people. Her uncle Mordecai's words echoed, "Do you think you were made queen for comfort? Perhaps for such a time as this you were placed here. If you remain silent, our people perish. But if you rise, God will save through you." Esther chose courage. She called her people to fast and pray 3 days, and then stepped into the throne room, whispering, "If I perish, I perish." And because of her obedience, a nation was saved. The chosen one's tears fell again. They felt Esther's weakness and also her call. Not powerful, not great, but chosen. And God always chooses the weak to show his strength. Oh, a whisper filled their soul. Like Esther, you are placed here not by accident. You hear this command not for yourself alone, but to prepare for others. When the storm comes, your obedience will save your family, your community. They trembled. Preparation was more than stocking food. It was discipline, prayer, consecration. Each bowl of rice, each bean, each piece of salmon became a living prayer, a covenant sealed. "Lord," they prayed, "if you placed me here, give me courage if I must go against the crowd. Give me strength if I must stand alone. Remind me I am never truly alone." And gentle light wrapped around them, confirming they were ready. As Esther had been, the chosen one sat in awe, their heart overflowing from 4 sacred visions: manna in the desert, Noah's ark, Joseph's storehouses, Esther's courage. Each story a piece of the greater picture. God never abandons his people. He always prepares them ahead of time. whether bread falling from heaven, a ship built on dry land, granaries filled before famine, or a trembling queen fasting in secret, all proclaimed the same truth. He sees before, he knows before, he provides before, and trembling, the chosen one whispered, "Lord, I see it now. Rice, beans, salmon, these are no accident. They are the manna for our generation, the ark in clear skies, the grain for famine, the crown placed at the appointed hour. This is not about diet. This is destiny. This is sacred preparation." Their tears flowed freely, not from fear, but from a burning faith. They understood. To be chosen is to walk the narrow road. It is never the easy path, but always the path to life. And then came the final whisper, "Prepare, obey, for your obedience will not only save you, it will shield those I have entrusted to you." The chosen one gasped, then asked aloud, not only for themselves, but for all who were listening now, "If God placed you in this moment, would you obey and prepare, or would you sit idle, waiting for the storm to break?" Part 5, the spiritual upgrade. The chosen one remembered the day their journey began. Before that, their body felt heavy, bound like a prisoner in chains. Each industrial meal was another layer of dust smothering the spark within. Red meat, greasy oils, chemical sugars all built a prison cell inside them. They would wake in the mornings weary, breath labored, eyes dimmed of light. But when they humbled themselves and obeyed eating only rice, beans, and salmon, something miraculous began. At first, it was subtle, deeper sleep, a morning without the old heaviness. But day by day, their body felt cleansed from the inside out. Years of toxins seemed to vanish. Breath grew lighter, skin brighter, steps steadier. They realized this was more than nutrition. It was a baptism of the body. Just as Israel passed through the Red Sea to leave behind slavery, their body was passing through a river, leaving the bondage of poisoned food. One morning, they gazed in the mirror and marveled. Eyes once clouded with fatigue now sparkled with inner light. The stomach once knotted with pain now rested in peace. Their heartbeat pulsed like a song, smiling through tears. They whispered, "Lord, you have not only saved my soul, you are saving my body." For years, they had seen their body as a burden, a temporary shell. But now they understood it was God's temple, and through each grain of rice, each bean, each piece of salmon, he was cleansing, restoring, rebuilding his dwelling place. And in that moment, they knew the cleansing of the body was not the final goal. It was the doorway, opening into the deeper transformation of mind and soul. As their body grew lighter, another wonder emerged. Their mind was set free. Before, their thoughts were chaos, worries flooding, dreams shattered, painful memories chasing like shadows. They tried to pray, but their head throbbed with noise, unpaid bills, cruel words, fears of tomorrow. Silence was impossible. But after days of faithful obedience, rice, beans, salmon, their mind began to clear. Invisible chains snapped. For the first time in years, they could sit in stillness, not a fearful silence, but a silence full of presence. And in that quiet, familiar scripture came alive again. "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." They trembled. This was it. Renewal was happening, not through theory, but through obedience. By refusing the dead foods, their mind was no longer polluted. It became clear as a stream, reflecting the light of heaven. One morning, as they opened the Bible,
the words slowed them down.
Each verse pierced deeper, not rushed, not duty, but like a direct conversation with the Father. Ink on the page burned alive like fire, and they wept. For years they had begged to hear God's voice, but he had never been silent. It was their noisy mind that had drowned him out. Through tears, they prayed, "Thank you for cleansing my mind. I am no longer a prisoner of fear, of memory. I am your child, free to hear your voice clearly. From then on, they lived differently. Each thought no longer a wild torrent, but a brick-building faith. They learned to capture every thought and lay it at Christ's feet. Their mind became fertile soil, where hope could grow strong. With body cleansed, mind renewed, they felt the deepest transformation of all. Their soul was upgraded. Their soul was like a dusty instrument, strings warped, sound harsh and broken. They tried to worship, but the song cracked with exhaustion. They prayed, but words fell flat, lifeless. But now something new had come. In the night, closing their eyes, they felt the rhythm of their soul beating in tune with heaven's whispers, like a current of holy electricity flowing through them, making them tremble, making them weep. They began to sense God's presence in the smallest things. A beam of sunlight through the window, a gentle wind stirring the curtain, a drop of water on their hand. Each moment was a hymn, reminding them they were never alone. One morning on their knees, they felt a weight upon their shoulders. Not burden, but crown. And in the depths of their soul, they heard, "You are mine, you are chosen, and now your soul is ready for greater things." The chosen one broke into tears. For years they carried shame, believing they weren't enough, believing past mistakes had stolen closeness with God. But now they saw soul upgrade came not through perfection, but through small daily obedience. A bowl of rice, a handful of beans, a piece of salmon, simple, sacred tools lifting their soul to heaven. When they rose, they were different, no longer beaten down by life, but a warrior of spirit. Their eyes shone, their voice carried weight, their very breath bore the presence of God. The upgrade was not for pride, but for humility, to bow deeper, knowing it was all grace. They whispered, "My soul no longer belongs to darkness. I belong to you, and I am ready." They realized now, the cleansing of body, mind, and soul was never an end. It was preparation for purpose. For years they had wandered lost, asking, "Why am I here? Why was I born? Why all this pain?" Those questions once crushed them, but now, in the light, they understood. The years of tears were not punishment. They were preparation, like Joseph, betrayed and imprisoned, but raised to save nations, like Esther, hidden in a palace, but placed to deliver her people. Their suffering had sown seeds, and now a harvest of destiny was rising. Walking the streets one day, they saw weary, empty faces, and a clear message echoed in their heart. "You have been upgraded not for yourself, but to be hope for others. You are the light I set on a hill. You are the salt I scatter on the earth. You cannot stay silent." Their soul shook. Rebirth was no theory now. It was fire. They could not return to old foods, old thoughts, old ways. The flame within demanded witness. They knew to step into purpose meant greater trials. But they no longer feared, for they knew who had chosen, who had upgraded, who would fight for them. Eyes burning, they whispered, "I am ready, ready to live as proof that you are real." That night, they knelt in a dark room. Only a single candle flickered, but in that flame, they saw their whole journey, a body cleansed, a mind renewed, a soul upgraded, and now purpose ablaze. And from deep within, a whisper rose, "You have passed through fire, yet not consumed, through waters, yet not drowned. Now I declare, you are mine, you are chosen." They sobbed, all doubt melted away, no longer a failure, no longer forsaken. They were a child restored, clothed in a new robe, crowned with grace. From that moment, they walked differently. Each step carried heaven's weight. Each prayer reached God's throne. Even their silence filled rooms with presence. They knew this was not an ending, but a beginning. the start of a new journey. A soul upgraded, a warrior forged in fire, a witness sealed by grace. And as they lifted their eyes toward the horizon, where shadows still reigned, where many still wandered lost, they knew their mission, to carry this light outward. Breathing deep, they asked themselves, and you, the listeners of this story, if God placed you here with body, mind, and soul upgraded, with divine purpose burning, would you stay silent, or would you rise as the chosen one? The candle still flickered, but within them, another flame had been lit, a flame that would never go out. Part 6, your body as a temple. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine your body is not merely flesh and bone. It is a temple radiant in the light of God, a sacred dwelling crafted for His presence. The Apostle Paul once wrote, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you?" 1 Corinthians 6:19. These words are not distant doctrine, but a living reality, a mystery breathing through every cell of your being. When you eat, it is not just your stomach that receives food. It is the temple that receives it. When you choose what is pure and life-giving, you are placing a holy offering upon the altar of your temple. But when you choose what is toxic, industrial, filled with dead energy, it is as though you are throwing refuse into the sanctuary, leaving the altar abandoned and desecrated. The chosen one realized this during a moment of deep prayer. They saw themselves standing before a temple, sometimes glowing like crystal, sometimes dim and defiled by careless choices. Trembling, with tears streaming down, they whispered, "Lord, how long have I dishonored your temple? How long have I wounded the very place where you dwell?" That awareness marked a turning point. Eating and drinking were no longer about personal preference or fleeting satisfaction. They became holy rituals. Every bowl of rice, every handful of beans, every slice of salmon became symbols of devotion. And in that shift, something miraculous happened. Their body began to heal, fatigue lessened, sickness faded, and inner strength awakened. They understood, when the temple is cleansed, God's presence shines brighter. They prayed softly, "I want to guard my body as one guards the holy place. I want every cell within me to sing your praise." Looking back, the chosen one saw how, for years, subtle enemies had invaded the temple not with sword or flame, but with snacks from factories, sodas laced with chemicals, meat from creatures raised in darkness, and slaughtered in fear. At first, it all seemed harmless, a party treat, a quick drink, a meal just for fun. But slowly, these habits became hidden invaders, defiling the temple one bite at a time. And the most frightening part, they never noticed. Exhaustion settled in, their mind clouded, prayer grew shallow, and their heart grew heavy. Each time they stumbled, they blamed themselves. Maybe my faith is weak. Maybe I'm not close enough to God. But in truth, it was the enemy foods that had stolen the temple's light. One night, in a dream, they stood in the ancient temple of Jerusalem. The altar was no longer pure, but covered with filth, grease, and decay. Then a thunderous voice roared, "How long will you allow my dwelling to remain defiled?" They awoke in terror, their heart racing, tears streaming like rain, and they understood this was not just about health. This was spiritual. To protect the body was to protect their communion with God. From that day, a new journey began. They cleared away the hidden enemies, the candies, the sodas, the processed feasts. Each meal became a question of worship. Will this brighten the temple of God, or will it darken it? And mysteriously, with each act of surrender, they felt like living water was washing them clean. God's nearness grew tangible, His voice clearer. "I will no longer let enemies defile this temple. It belongs to you alone," they whispered in prayer. Mornings no longer began with caffeine or greasy food. Instead, a glass of pure water lifted like an offering. "Holy Spirit, cleanse my body as you cleanse my soul. Every grain of rice, every bean, every piece of salmon was no longer food, it was a sacrifice. With each bite, they prayed, I give this to you. Make my body strong, that I may serve your kingdom. At times, temptation came back, invitations to feasts, old cravings whispering their names. But then the dream of the defiled temple returned to mind. They shuddered but stood firm. Oh, this temple does not belong to flesh. It belongs to God. And with each act of resistance, a new strength welled up. A peace unknown before filled their soul. The cleansing did not stop with food. The chosen one became mindful of what they read, what they listened to, what they allowed into their heart. They realized just as food nourishes the body, thoughts nourish the mind. And with each rejection of bitterness, negativity, and toxic noise, their temple glowed brighter. One evening, in prayer, a radiant presence enveloped them. A whisper stirred within. You have begun to cleanse the temple. I will complete the work. This time, their tears were not from shame, but from relief, from joy, from a soul rediscovering its way home. They understood now. Cleansing was not merely removing the bad. It was creating space for God's presence to dwell more fully. And then, one quiet night, something extraordinary happened. In the stillness, a light ignited within, not blazing like wildfire, but glowing like a lamp freshly filled with oil. They realized this was the fruit of cleansing. When the impurities are removed, the hidden light of God within has room to shine. Their body, the temple, was no longer dim. It had become a lamp set upon a hill, glowing not just for themselves, but for others to see. Their family began to notice. Their smile was gentler, their voice warmer, their patience deeper. A friend whispered, "What happened to you? You seem radiant." The chosen one only smiled softly. "It's not me. It's the light of the one who lives within me." And the body itself responded. Fatigue vanished. Sleep grew restful. Each morning, they woke renewed, as though their blood pulsed with heaven's rhythm. It was no longer natural strength, it was divine vitality, birthed from honoring the body as holy ground. In prayer, they once more saw the image of the ancient temple no longer broken or defiled, but radiant, whole, restored. A whisper filled their spirit. This temple belongs to me, and through it, I will shine upon a generation. Tears fell freely. They finally understood. The light within was never for them alone. It was for the wandering souls outside, still searching for hope. That night, they prayed, "If my body is the lamp, Lord, then pour your oil without ceasing, that this light may never go out." The room was still. A single candle flickered. Their heartbeat thumped like a holy drum, and they made a vow. "Lord, I have defiled this temple for too long, but from this day forward, I will guard it as treasure. I will not eat for fleshly pleasure alone, but as an act of worship. This body is no longer mine, it is yours." And in that moment, they felt the unseen hand of God rest upon their shoulder, and sealing their vow. They knew then this was about more than food. It was about life itself. Every choice, every habit, every action would now pass through the lens of worship. Old memories flooded back, reckless nights, careless meals, seasons of neglect, each memory pierced like a blade. But even through tears, they heard his gentle whisper, "I do not see the past defilement. I see your surrendered present, and I call you holy." Shaking in his presence, the chosen one realized they had stepped through a new door. No longer a life chained to fleshly cravings, but a life wholly consecrated to God. They rose, wiped their tears, and gazed into the mirror. The reflection staring back was no longer just a human body. It was a temple glowing with holy light. And softly, they spoke to their own reflection, "This body is no longer mine. It is the altar of the living God. Part 7, Fuel for the Mission. In the gentle light of dawn, a tiny grain of rice rested in the chosen one's palm. Just a smooth white kernel, seemingly insignificant, yet in the eyes of God, it was a miracle of life. They remembered the endless fields, each seed sinking its roots deep into the soil. Rain, sun, storm, and wind all came against it. Yet the rice plant stood steadfast, and in the end, it offered its gift grains that had nourished humanity for generations. As the chosen one lifted the rice to their lips, they felt something unusual. It wasn't just fuel for the body, it was an anchor for the soul. Rice held them steady, the way the ground steadies our feet when storms rage. It whispered, "Before you rise, learn to stand firm." In a moment of prayer, they heard a quiet voice within. "Just as the grain sinks its roots deep into the earth, so must you sink your roots deep into my word. Do not let the winds of life sweep you away." Tears welled up. For years, they had wandered chasing lavish feasts, fleeting pleasures, and empty promises. But now, with nothing more than a humble bowl of white rice, they felt grounded again. Their mind drifted back to childhood, to the little kitchen where their mother cooked rice, its fragrance filling the whole house. Back then, they hadn't understood. Now they knew. Those meals weren't just food, they were silent prayers. A mother's plea that her child would walk steady through life. Rice did more than feed the body. It carried memory, tradition, endurance, the very resilience God longed to carve into his children. In its simplicity, they felt tethered once again to their sacred purpose. As they looked down at the plain bowl before them, it no longer seemed ordinary. It had become a reminder of safety, stability, and the invitation to remain steadfast in their calling. Before them sat a steaming bowl of stewed beans, deep brown and fragrant, each tender bite melting on the tongue. On the surface, it was only a humble dish, yet through the eyes of faith, it became a quiet reservoir of strength, heaven's provision. As they ate, they remembered the farmers of old families who lived on beans during lean seasons. They had no grand feasts, yet they rose each dawn with strength enough to till parched soil, to sow seeds through tears, and to reap with hope. Beans were the food of servants, not kings. They carried a lesson. True strength is not in showy muscle, but in the quiet persistence of calloused hands that never give up. The chosen one closed their eyes and whispered in prayer, "Lord, I don't want to live for myself alone. Grant me the strength of the bean, the strength to serve, to uplift, to endure, even in my weariness." In that moment, they saw Christ kneeling to wash his disciples' feet. He who could summon legions of angels chose instead the strength of a servant. And they understood. Eating beans was more than sustaining the body. It was accepting the mantle of servanthood. Muscles may grow weak, but the spirit of a servant, fed by humility, will never run dry. Beans testified that strength does not come from pride, but from humble love. Tears slipped down their cheeks. They whispered, "If eating even one bean helps me stand to serve another, then let me eat them all my life. For you have not called me to rule, but to be a faithful servant in your kingdom." The bowl of beans became a holy table, and that quiet strength began to flow into their very bones. On the table lay a piece of salmon, its pink flesh seared golden, juices glistening like morning light. The chosen one gazed at it through tear-streaked eyes, for in the simple meal they saw a gift of sacred wisdom. Salmon are not fragile creatures. They swim against the current, leap through rushing waters, and battle the rapids to return to their source. And God whispered through this image, "True wisdom swims against the world's tide. You are not called to blend in, you are called to stand apart." As the fish touched their tongue, clarity swept over them. It wasn't only physical strength they received, but a sharpness of mind, a quiet discernment. Confusion lifted, and hidden truths began to unfold. They thought of King Solomon, He did not ask for riches, nor victory over enemies. He asked only for wisdom to guide God's people. And the Lord smiled, granting him wisdom and abundance besides. The chosen one trembled and prayed, "Lord, I don't need a banquet of riches. I only need your wisdom. Grant me a discerning heart to see right from wrong, to walk the path you lead." In their spirit, they saw a river and salmon pressing upstream, not because they craved hardship, but because they knew their journey ended in life, in fruitfulness. And God reminded them, wisdom is not just for you, it is for generations. It is to bear eternal fruit. The chosen one looked again at their table, a bowl of rice, a pot of beans, a slice of salmon, plain, unadorned. Yet in the light of faith, these were not 3 simple dishes, but 3 pillars of holy preparation. Rice teaching them to stand firm, beans granting them strength, salmon imparting wisdom. Together, they revealed the full picture of God's provision. Not a single detail had been overlooked, from field to river, from seed to sea. God had prepared nourishment for both body and soul. They closed their eyes, breathing deeply. Their heart recalled the times in Scripture when God set a table just when his people needed it most. Manna in the desert, oil unending in a widow's jar, bread and fish by Galilee's shore. He had never left his children hungry. Lifting a spoonful of rice, a bit of bones, and a flake of salmon, they let them touch the tongue together for the first time, and their heart broke open not from flavor, but from revelation. God has not called me to merely survive. He has prepared me perfectly for the mission. Tears streamed freely, no longer weak, no longer adrift. They felt clothed like a warrior, not with sword or spear, but with steadfastness, endurance, and wisdom, all gifts from the hand of God. In that moment, they knew eating rice, beans, and salmon was more than a healthy choice. It was obedience to a holy command. And whoever obeys will never lack what they need for the path God has written. The chosen one brushed away tears and gazed once more at the 3 dishes before them. Rice, beans, salmon. For years they had dismissed such meals as ordinary. But now they saw them as a covenant meal prepared by the Lord himself. Deep within, a whisper echoed, "I have fed you not just to survive, but to fulfill your mission. I have given you food not only for the body, but for the soul." Chosen one, are you ready? The question shook their heart. They knew this was no mere meal, it was divine training. Every grain of rice, every bean, every shred of salmon carried heaven's command. Stand firm, be strong, walk in wisdom. Their head bowed, shoulders trembling not from fear, but from awe. God had entrusted them, not because they were mighty, but because they were willing. He calls not only heroes, but the weak, to transform them into warriors. The room seemed to glow with light. Taking a deep breath, they whispered, "Yes, Lord, though shadows lie ahead, I will stand firm. I will serve. I will walk in your wisdom." And in that moment, they sensed they were not alone. All around them, faint footsteps stirred the unseen army of other chosen ones, also preparing, also listening to the same command. A quiet yet mighty community was rising. And now, the question lingers not only for them, but for you, the one hearing this story. If God set this table before you, what would you do? Part 8, The Coming Shaking. The chosen one sat by the window, staring outside. The sky still held its light, yet something felt strangely off. The sparrow that usually sang each morning was silent. The trees stood motionless, as though holding their breath. Deep inside, an uneasiness stirred a quiet dread they could not name. That night, they dreamed. The vision was so vivid that when they awoke, their blanket was drenched in sweat. They saw the earth trembling, roads splitting wide open, crowds of people fleeing in chaos. Store shelves lay bare, no rice, no beans, no dried fish. People fought over crumbs, desperate eyes hollow with fear. And in the midst of the madness stood houses glowing with light. Inside, the chosen ones sat calmly around tables, sharing rice, beans, and salmon as if feasting at heaven's banquet. The chosen one bolted upright, heart pounding. They knew the first shaking had begun, not the shaking of the earth, but of the soul. A warning from heaven: you must prepare, for soon the whole world will be shaken. By the next day, news flooded in. A new plague emerging. Rice fields swept away by floods. Fish dying en masse along the coasts. Global supply chains breaking apart. The dream was becoming reality. Their hands trembled, but their heart recalled the sacred command. Everything else is poison. Only these three will keep you alive. Peace settled upon them. While the world scrambled in panic, they knew obedience was their refuge. Rice, beans, and salmon, the simple yet sacred provision, would be enough to carry them through the shaking. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, resting on their face. Gone was the panic. In its place, a quiet resolve to listen and obey, for only those who obey would stand when the true quake arrived. That morning, they entered the familiar supermarket, once full of laughter, rolling carts, and children's voices. Now it was eerily silent. Long shelves were stripped bare. Meat, milk, bread vanished overnight. Even the cheapest packet of noodles was gone. They walked slowly down the aisles, fingertips brushing the cold metal racks. For the first time, scarcity was not a distant headline. It stood before their very eyes. People shoved and shouted, clutching at scraps. Faces were flushed with exhaustion, hollowed by despair. A young mother held her crying child, begging a clerk, "Please, do you have any milk left? My baby hasn't eaten since last night." The clerk shook his head, tears streaming down his cheeks. The chosen one's chest ached at the sight. Then, within their spirit, a whisper stirred. "I warned you. When the world panics, my people will be preserved, not by strength, but by obedience." Their mind turned to their modest kitchen at home: bags of rice, jars of beans, dried salmon tucked away. To outsiders, it looked plain, even poor, but they knew this was heaven's treasure. While shelves out here were empty, their table would not lack. Standing in that chaos, tears filled their eyes, not from fear, but from overwhelming grace. God had not only spared them from hunger, He had shown them a truth. Those who obey are the ones who endure. As they left the store, they lifted their gaze to the gray sky. A quiet trust rose up. "Lord, no matter how long this shaking lasts, I know you will never abandon me." Weeks passed, and before the food crisis eased, another wave hit plague. Streets once bustling now stood silent. Shops shuttered. Few cars passed, except for the haunting wail of ambulances piercing the gloom. The chosen ones stepped into the deserted street, mask covering their face, a worn Bible in hand. Every footstep echoed with a question: if today were my last, am I ready? Houses nearby were sealed, marked with quarantine. Pale lights flickered within, shadows of the sick lying weak. A harsh cough rang out, breaking the heavy silence. Fear clawed at their heart. But then came His whisper: "When disaster draws near, I am your refuge. When darkness spreads, my light will guide you. Keep yourself in covenant, and you will not be shaken." They stopped in the middle of the street, lifting their eyes to the gray heavens. A verse rose within: "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." In that instant, they felt a cloak fall upon them, not fabric, but God's very presence wrapping them in protection. By the time they returned home, something inside had shifted. Fear was gone, replaced by an unexplainable peace. Amid streets silenced by plague, their hearts sang softly, "Though the world shakes, I stand secure in your love." And they knew this was only the beginning. The greater shaking was yet to come. That night, the city fell into blackout. Towers, once blazing with light, now stood as darkened silhouettes. Wind howled through the hollow streets, carrying a chilling cry. The chosen ones sat quietly in their small room, a lone candle flickering. Then came the sounds. At first, the heavy cough of a neighbor, then the wailing of a child piercing the night. Soon it swelled into a chorus of despair pounding on doors, desperate cries for medicine, weak groans of those fading. The chosen one pressed a hand to their chest, heart racing. Part of them longed to run out, to give what little they had. Yet another part knew this too was a trial. Without clinging to God's word, they too would fall. Amid the cries, they closed their eyes, and then a different voice rose within, gentle yet firm. Do not fear, my child. I have heard the cries of my people through the ages. As I heard Israel in Egypt, I hear them now, and I will deliver. But you must stand firm, for I have chosen you to remain standing when all else crumbles. Tears streamed down their face. They whispered, Lord, I am powerless, but you are strong. Turn these cries into testimonies of your miracle. The candlelight trembled across their tear-streaked cheeks, yet peace enveloped them like God's own hand resting upon their shoulder. You are not alone. I am here. That night, they learned a truth. The darkness always screams loudest before the dawn. At sunrise, the city looked changed. No bustling crowds, only gaunt figures dragging weary steps in search of food. Pale light revealed hollow eyes and broken spirits. The chosen one stood by the window, watching, and then came the final warning, clear and thunderous, like a trumpet from heaven. Prepare, for the shaking will grow greater still. Only those who obey will be preserved. Only those who keep the 3 foods I appointed will stand. Those who refuse will not survive. Their heart quivered not with fear, but with urgency. This was no longer about meals. It was about souls. This was the line between the chosen and the world. They remembered Noah building the ark while mocked. Yet when the rains fell, only those within were saved. They remembered Israel when the angel passed through Egypt. Only the houses marked with lamb's blood were spared. History was repeating. But now the ark was obedience. The blood was trust. In the silence, they fell to their knees. Tears spilled onto the wooden floor, mingling with prayer. Lord, keep me faithful. Keep me standing through the shaking. Make me a living testimony of your power. And as if heaven exhaled, peace cloaked them. They knew this was the final warning and the last chance to prepare. Beloved listener, do you see it? This is not just their story, it is yours. Even now, the Lord is asking you, if I placed you in this shaking, what would you do? Part 9, Obedience Unlocks Blessings. The chosen one remembered the very first day they chose to walk in obedience. It was not an easy decision, surrounded by voices of doubt, lured by the sweet temptations of the world. They heard the whisper of the Lord. Do as I say, and you will see. They began with something simple, laying aside the foods full of chemicals, full of fleshly desires, keeping only the 3 things God had appointed. To outsiders, it seemed foolish. Yet within, a strange fire was lit. Each time they cooked a pot of rice, simmered beans, or prepared a piece of salmon, it felt like they were offering a sacrifice, not on a stone altar, but on the altar of their soul. And then the wonder began. Their body grew lighter, their mind clearer. In prayer each night, God's voice became sharper, nearer, like a friend whispering close. Dreams turned into messages filled with images, reminders, and a direction. The chosen one discovered something. Obedience opened doors that prayer alone could not. For prayer is words sent upward, but obedience is action, a bridge between earth and heaven. One evening, kneeling in prayer, they felt heaven's presence wrap around them. A voice resounded within, warm and full of power. Because you obeyed in the small, I will bless you in the great. Because you chose me over the world, I now choose you to carry my light into the world. Tears poured down their face. They realized every drop of sweat, every night of weeping. Oh, every sacrifice that seemed small, heaven had recorded them all. Nothing was wasted in God's sight. In that moment, faith swelled inside them. Obedience does not just shift the present, it unlocks treasures of the future. As they continued walking in obedience, doors that had long stayed shut began to swing wide. One day, their pantry was nearly empty. Only a few cans of beans, a little rice, and the last frozen slice of salmon remained. Worry crept in. What if it runs out? How will I survive? But before the thought settled, a voice answered deep within. I am your provider. Do not worry about tomorrow. The very next morning, a long-lost friend knocked on their door, carrying a bag full of rice and beans, saying they had felt compelled to share. It wasn't just help, it was a sign that heaven had heard. Obedience had become a vibration that reached the throne of God. Each simple meal rose like a sweet fragrance, and heaven could not ignore it. Little miracles began to fall, bills paid without explanation, lingering pains vanishing, doors of opportunity opening at the perfect moment. The chosen one realized heaven does not search for perfection, it searches for obedience. And when it finds it, God responds without delay. One night in prayer, the room seemed flooded with invisible light. Fear, pressure, exhaustion all dissolved, and they heard the whisper, Do you see? I never left you. I was only waiting for you to choose me first. They wept not from lack, but from gratitude. Tears fell like seeds into promised soil. From that moment, they knew without doubt, obedience always ushers in miracles. No matter how dark the circumstance, heaven always has a way to answer. And they were not alone. As they shared their journey, testimonies began to echo from everywhere, weaving together a chorus of faith. A woman told how years of stomach illness, untouched by doctors, faded when she obeyed God's call to leave harmful foods and return to the 3 foods of life. Her family mocked her at first, but months later, her body healed, her pain gone, her spirit renewed. A young man testified that his mind, once clouded in confusion, had been restored. He began dreaming with clarity, receiving divine direction for his future. Today, he serves his community, a living witness that God grants wisdom to those who obey. A poor family, down to their last handful of rice, knelt in prayer. Lord, we believe you are our provider. The very next morning, a neighbor knocked, delivering a sack of rice, confessing they had felt urged to give. That family not only ate, but found their faith strengthened tenfold. Story after story spread, and the chosen one realized an unshakable truth. When one person obeys, an entire community is blessed. Obedience creates ripples spreading life, faith, and hope. Some testimonies came with laughter, some with tears, some with sighs of relief after years of suffering, but all carried one conclusion: God always keeps his promise. The chosen one's heart trembled as they realized they had entered a greater family, the family of all who had chosen obedience, and in turn witnessed miracles. They began to see an eternal pattern. Every act of obedience draws a response from heaven. When Noah built the ark, his family was saved. When Abraham laid Isaac on the altar, nations were born. When Esther dared step before the king, her people were spared. Every act of obedience unlocks heaven's door. They remembered the many times they had prayed and wept, wondering why heaven was silent. Now they knew God was never late. He was waiting for their obedience. When their feet moved, the miracle moved with them. A mentor once told them, prayer is the seed, obedience is the rain. Without rain, how can there be a harvest? And suddenly, it all became clear. God had heard every prayer, but the harvest needed the rain of obedience. And indeed, each act of obedience, whether small, like giving up a harmful food, or great, like forgiving someone who had wounded them, opened another door. Peace entered, health returned, wisdom flowed, broken relationships healed. They realized heaven does not demand perfection, only surrender. A single yes to God births miracle after miracle. The chosen one fell to their knees and whispered, "Lord, I don't want to only hear you. I want to obey you." In that instant, it felt like living water rushed through their soul, pure, strong, washing away every fear. Silence filled the room. Every testimony, every truth, every miracle pointed to one decision. The choice to obey. This was no longer someone else's story. It was theirs, deep within. They heard God's ancient question echo, "Today I set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life, so you and your descendants may live." Their hands trembled. Two voices wrestled inside, one of fear, of old habits, whispering, "It will be too hard. You will be too alone." But the other voice was gentle, steady, full of power. "Trust me. Step forward. I will walk with you." They remembered their mother's eyes in prayer, their father's weary sighs after long battles. They realized this choice was not just for themselves, but for generations to come. Today's obedience would unlock tomorrow's blessings. A tear fell not from fear, but from knowing God had entrusted them with the sacred chance to make their life a living testimony of His love. And now, dear listener, the narrator turns to you, softly asking, you've heard the testimonies, you've seen heaven's pattern. You know, obedience unlocks blessing. Now the question is yours. If God placed you in this moment, what would you do? Will you cling to fear, or will you obey? Will you let doubt chain you, or will you whisper one simple yes, Lord, and watch the floodgates of heaven open? Light spread across the chosen one's face, and in that glow, they knew the time to decide had come. Part 10. Rise as the chosen one. The sky had just endured a long storm. Slowly, the gray clouds broke apart, and the first rays of dawn pierced through. The chosen one stood in silence, eyes fixed on the horizon. Gone was the confusion of past days. In its place was the calm resolve of a soul that had finally found its place in God's divine plan. A whisper stirred within. You are no longer a wanderer. You are mine. You are proof that faith survives. They remembered it all, the silent nights of weeping, the collapses, the moments they thought heaven had forgotten their name. Yet they realized it was the scars that marked them as chosen, not because they were stronger, but because they had endured, holding on to faith when the way forward was invisible. A sacred pride welled up, not arrogance, but honor. They stood taller, shoulders heavy, yet heart light, like a warrior receiving a sword from the king. They knew their life was no longer their own. Every step now was not just for them, but for those still lost in the dark. They understood the mission of the chosen is not to live for themselves, but to become a signpost, God's light shining through them for others. Tears fell, but this time they were tears of joy. They whispered, Lord, if this is the name you've placed upon me, I accept it. I will rise as your chosen one. The sunlight bathed their face, cloaking them in radiance. This was the awakening of identity. They walked forward, still weary, yet each step pulsed with new authority. Around them stood people shaken by fear, faces etched with sleepless nights, eyes searching desperately for someone to lead. And then it happened. All eyes turned toward them, not because they were the wisest or strongest, but because something undeniable shone within them, faith refined by fire. One trembling voice broke the silence. Is there still hope for us? Or is this the end? The chosen one drew a deep breath, met their eyes, and answered, No, this is not the end. This is the beginning. We are not walking toward destruction. We are being prepared for a new season. If we keep the faith, we will see the miracle. The words lit sparks in weary hearts. Someone lifted their head. Another clenched their fists in resolve. All they needed was one voice of confirmation, and they had found it. Strength surged through the chosen one, flowing not from themselves, but from God's presence, like Moses lifting his staff at the sea, like Esther stepping into the king's court. They knew the power was not theirs, but the Lord's with them. They stepped forward, firm and sure. Each stride etched a path for others to follow. Without being told, the crowd moved too, not following a person, but a heavenly sign. Softly, yet firmly, the chosen one declared, "I was not chosen to stand still. I was chosen to lead. And if God has chosen me, no power can stand against it." The air itself seemed to echo the words. For the first time in years, the people felt hope return. But soon, the storm of trial returned. Just days into the journey, hunger struck. Food ran low. Fear whispered again through the crowd. Murmurs turned into complaints. Where are we going? Did this one truly hear God, or are we walking into death? Oh, the chosen one heard it all. Their heart wavered. Memories of failure clawed back the days they had fallen, the doubts that whispered, "You are not enough." Yet into that darkness came a deeper silence, the Lord's voice within, "I chose you, and I will provide." They closed their eyes and prayed in the midst of the unrest. When they opened them, they saw wild bean plants sprouting by the roadside, a stream trickling from the rock nearby. They bent down, lifted a bean to the crowd, and declared, "God never abandons his people. He gave manna in the wilderness, and today he has given us food by his own hand." A hush fell. One by one, the people gathered beans, drank from the stream. Tears streaked faces, not just from hunger relieved, but from the miracle they had witnessed. The chosen ones sighed in relief, not because the trial had passed, but because they now understood. True leadership is not proving your strength. It is pointing others back to God's. That night, under a starry sky, they knew this was only the beginning, yet a fire burned in their spirit. If God has begun, he will finish. At dawn, the people gathered again, eyes now filled not with suspicion, but with trust. An elderly woman reached for the chosen one's hand, trembling. "Child, I dreamed last night. I saw God place a radiant cloak upon your shoulders. I believe he has chosen you to lead us." The words struck like lightning. They felt the weight of heaven's mantle on their shoulders, lay not just one hand, but the souls of many. Scripture flooded their mind. Moses trembling at his call, Esther quaking before the king, Jeremiah crying, "I am too young." Yet each, clothed in responsibility, turned weakness into testimony of God's strength. The chosen one lifted their eyes to heaven. "Lord, I am not wise enough, nor strong enough, but if you have laid this cloak on me, I give you all I am. Weak, weary, but still, I say yes." A gentle wind brushed by, heaven's affirmation. Turning back to the people, they declared, "We will not merely survive. We will rise. We will be living witnesses of the one who called us." The crowd wept, not in fear, but in hope. They knew they were no longer wanderers. They had a leader leaning not on their own strength, but on God's. That evening, the whole community gathered under the stars. No more quarrels, no more sighs, only the rustling wind like heaven's own hymn. The chosen one stood among them, firelight dancing across their face. Their voice began unsteady, then grew strong. "Brothers and sisters, we are no longer lost. We are God's people, and he has placed a mission upon us." They raised a hand toward the fire. "This flame, if left alone, will fade. But if each of us adds wood, it will blaze through the night." That is our calling, not to stand alone, but to stand together. Emotions swept through the crowd. Mothers embraced their children. Young men gripped each other's hands. Elders wept openly. They knew this was not just encouragement, it was a summons. The chosen one stepped closer, voice firm. God saved Noah through an ark, Joseph through storehouses, Esther through courage, and today he saves us through obedience and unity. We will not just preserve life, we will ignite the world with our faith. Suddenly, a voice cried out, "We are the chosen ones." And like a flood, dozens, hundreds echoed in unison. We are the chosen ones. We will rise. We will obey. The chosen one stood at the center, tears flowing, heart ablaze with unshakable faith. Every trial before this had led to this moment. The trembling soul transformed into the leader of God's people. Their gaze pierced the night into the unseen future. Chosen ones, it is time to rise. Not tomorrow, not when we feel ready, but now, this is the appointed hour. Then, lowering their voice to a whisper that seemed aimed at every listening soul. If God placed you here, what would you do? Heaven's light poured down, brilliant as the sun after the storm. On the old wooden table sat 3 humble dishes, a bowl of rice, a pot of beans, a piece of salmon. Yet in this moment, they were no longer ordinary. They had become a holy banquet, where heaven met earth. The chosen one placed trembling hands upon the table, eyes lifted to the light. Every tear, every lonely night, every breaking moment had led to this. They spoke softly, yet the words rang with power. You are not just surviving, you are ascending. Every bite is a step into your divine destiny. The crowd fell silent. None moved, none breathed. For they knew the words were not just for the chosen one, but for every soul present, for every listener across the world. We are not chosen by merit. We are not chosen by perfection. We are chosen by grace. Grace has kept us, guided us, and today grace is lifting us up. You are no longer weak. You are a living witness of God's unending love. Silence held, deep and sacred. Then the chosen one looked into the camera, eyes brimming with tears, as if gazing into each listener's soul. If you feel this calling, it is not by chance. This is your moment. Say it with heaven. I am ready. Faith surged like a wave. Tears and laughter mingled. Broken hearts prayed aloud. They knew they were seen. They were named. They were loved. They were chosen.
Come on.
I am ready, and share this video to awaken another chosen one. If you believe you are chosen by God, type Amen in the comments. Share this message so someone else may know they are loved and chosen too. Beloved chosen one, thank you for staying until the end of this journey. This is not coincidence. This is heaven's time for you.